My mother kept that trunk locked for 37 years. 37, a lifetime. And when she died last month, my sisters divided up her $16 million jewelry collection while I just stood there watching. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink when Porsche turned to me with that familiar smirk and said, "Roland gets the trunk. Mother specifically said so." They laughed as they walked out with their fortune, their diamond necklaces glinting in the chandelier light. But when I finally broke open that worthless old trunk, I found something that made their millions look like pocket change. A stack of letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, all unopened, and the first line of the top letter made my legs give out. Dear Roland, if you're reading this, Beatrice is dead, and it's finally time you learned the truth. You were stolen from us when you were 5 years old. I must have read that line 10 times trying to make sense of it. My name, Roland Vance, or at least that's what I thought it was for 42 years. I teach music at Jefferson Middle School in Connecticut. My students call me Mr. V, and their parents thank me for having patience with their tone-deaf kids. It's not the life my mother wanted for me, but then again, nothing I ever did measured up to her expectations. Growing up in the Vance family felt like living in a play where everyone knew their lines except me. My mother, Beatrice Vance, was a legend, a self-made queen who built a jewelry empire from scratch, or so she claimed. She'd stand under the ballroom lights at endless charity galas, dripping in diamonds, smiling that perfect smile as she told the story of how she started with one small store and turned it into a multi-million-dollar chain. My sisters, they were her perfect supporting actresses. Portia, the eldest, was a corporate lawyer who could make sharks weep during a negotiation. Cordelia, the youngest, a prodigy designer whose jewelry was featured in every glossy magazine in New York. And then there was me, Roland, the disappointment, the son who'd rather teach kids hot cross buns on plastic recorders than learn how to run the family business. My father, Gerald, died when I was 15. Heart attack. Right there at his desk, calculator still in hand, he was quiet, gentle, the kind of man who seemed to shrink a little more each year, like life with Beatrice was slowly erasing him. And after he was gone, my uncle Chester Millbrook stepped in to fill that void. Loud, commanding, the kind of man who entered a room like he owned it, and usually he did. But through it all, that trunk sat there, against the back wall of my mother's massive walk-in closet. Old leather, brass corners turned green with age. I used to stare at it as a kid, wondering what kind of treasure she kept locked away. I asked her once when I was 8. She was sorting jewelry for another one of her galas. "What's in the trunk, Mother?" I remember her turning to me slowly, her eyes like shards of glass. "That's not for you to worry about, Roland. Some things are better left alone." When I was 13, I tried to open it. Everyone was gone at Porsche's debate championship, and I couldn't resist. I'd found a bobby pin in Cordelia's room, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally learn the secret. But before I could get the lock open, she caught me. She didn't yell. She didn't strike me. She just stopped talking to me. For a month, 30 silent dinners, 30 days of looking right through me like I didn't exist. That was when I learned that some mysteries weren't worth solving. But now, she was gone. Lung cancer. The cruelest irony. She'd never smoked a day in her life. The funeral was everything she'd have wanted. Hundreds of guests, mountains of flowers that probably cost more than my yearly salary, and a eulogy so polished it could have been written by her PR team. The governor even came. Portia and Cordelia sat in the front row, crying perfectly photogenic tears. I sat beside them, staring at the coffin, feeling nothing. Just a hollow space where grief should have been. Because how do you mourn someone who never really let you know them? 3 days later, the will was read. We met in Uncle Chester's office, a marble fortress downtown, the kind of place that smelled like old money and cigar smoke. I drove there in my 8-year-old Honda Civic, circled twice to find street parking because I couldn't bring myself to pay $20 for the garage. Portia arrived in her black Mercedes wearing a designer suit that could have paid my rent for 6 months. Cordelia swept in separately, glowing in jewelry she'd designed herself, each piece worth more than my car. Mr. Whitfield, the family lawyer, sat behind Chester's massive oak desk. His glasses perched low, papers stacked neatly before him. "Your mother was very specific," he began. "Every item, every dollar. carefully allocated. He started with the small gifts, 50,000 to the housekeeper, donations to charities, her first edition books going to Yale's library. It all sounded exactly like her, controlled, curated, perfect. Then came the big reveal. To my eldest daughter, Porsche Jane Vance, Mr. Whitfield read aloud, I leave the flagship stores in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, along with the Burmese rubies, the Cartier diamond set, and $4 million in liquid assets. Portia smiled. Of course she did. To my youngest daughter, Cordelia Ann Vance, I leave my personal design studio, all intellectual property rights to the Vance jewelry brand, and the remainder of my uncut emerald collection, valued at approximately $6 million. Cordelia's eyes glistened. And then came my turn. To my son, Roland Gregory Vance, there was a pause. A long one. Mr. Whitfield's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the papers. Uncle Chester cleared his throat. Portia's smirk returned. I leave the contents of my personal trunk. The room went silent. That was it. The trunk. No jewelry, no property, no cash. Just the same old trunk she'd forbidden me to open my entire life. When it was over, my sisters hugged Mr. Whitfield, thanked him for his professionalism, and strutted out with their multi-million-dollar inheritances. I just stood there, stunned, forgotten, the afterthought. That night, I went back to the mansion. The house felt like a mausoleum, silent, hollow, and colder than I remembered. I walked up to her room, past the mirrors, past the portraits, and into her walk-in closet. There it was. The trunk, sitting exactly where it had always been. I don't know what came over me, rage maybe, or desperation. I grabbed a crowbar from the garage, slammed it under the brass latch, and pried it open with every ounce of strength I had. The lock snapped. The lid creaked open. Inside, no jewelry, no gold, no secret cash. Just a stack of letters tied together with a faded red ribbon. Each envelope yellowed with age, and every one of them addressed to me. The first letter on top read, Dear Roland, if you're reading this, Beatrice is dead, and it's finally time you learned the truth. The words blurred as I read on. I was shaking. You were stolen from us when you were 5 years old. Stolen. I read the line again, and again. My knees buckled. I sat right there on the floor, surrounded by dust and shadows, trying to process the impossible. My mother wasn't my mother. Every memory I'd ever had of her, every cruel glance, every cold silence, it all began to make sense. Beatrice Vance hadn't been my mother. She had been my kidnapper. And Uncle Chester, her brother, had been part of it. There were more letters, dozens, each written by someone who called themselves your real mother. Her name was Eleanor Millbrook, Beatrice's sister, my birth mother. The letters told the story of how I was taken, hidden, and raised as Beatrice's son, while my real family spent years searching for me. The first letter described a summer in 1988, a family vacation in Maine. Eleanor and her husband had left me in Beatrice's care for one night, and when they returned the next morning, I was gone. Beatrice had vanished too. Police were called, posters went up, there were news reports, even a nationwide search. But after a year, the case went cold. Eleanor's heart broke. She stopped leaving the house, her marriage fell apart, and all that time, I was living in luxury in the Vance mansion, calling my kidnapper mother. Every cold stare, every cruel lesson, every moment she reminded me I wasn't enough. Maybe it was because she knew. Deep down, she knew I wasn't hers. The letters told me things I couldn't ignore. My real name wasn't Roland Vance. It was Michael Millbrook. I had a brother named David, a father who died searching for me, a mother who'd written to me every year, hoping that one day Beatrice would have the conscience to let me read them. But she never did. She locked them away. For 37 years. I don't remember how long I sat there, surrounded by those letters. Hours, maybe. Days. When I finally stood up, the room felt different, smaller, like the walls themselves were closing in. My sisters called me that night, laughing, like celebrating their inheritance. Portia joked about buying another house in Aspen. Cordelia said she'd start her own luxury brand. I didn't say a word about what I'd found. Not yet, because deep down I knew one thing. If Beatrice had stolen me, someone else must have helped her. Someone still alive. And I had a feeling I knew exactly who. Uncle Chester. I remembered the way he'd fidgeted during the will reading, the way he couldn't meet my eyes, the way he'd always been around when Beatrice was making family decisions. The next morning, I went back to his office. The receptionist tried to tell me he wasn't available, but I pushed past her. I found him in his study, staring out the window, drink in hand. "Roland," he said, voice calm, too calm. "You shouldn't be here." I dropped the letters on his desk. The red ribbon came loose, scattering them across the mahogany surface. He didn't even look surprised. "What did you do?" I asked, voice trembling. He sighed, took a long sip of his whiskey, and said quietly, "Your mother loved you in her own way." "My mother?" I snapped. "You mean Beatrice? Or should I say, my kidnapper?" He didn't deny it. Not once. Instead, he looked at me with something almost like pity. "There are things you don't understand, Roland, things that can't be undone." I stepped closer. "Then explain them." He smiled faintly, almost sad. "You think you're ready for the truth? Then read the last letter, the one sealed in black wax." I stared at him, heart pounding. He turned away, walking toward the window. "After you read it," he said softly, "you'll understand why Beatrice did what she did." And then he said something that still echoes in my head, something that changed everything. "She didn't steal you out of greed, Roland. She stole you to save you." The air left my lungs. Save me? From what? I looked down at the stack of letters, one of them sealed in black wax, heavier than the rest, and in that moment I realized the trunk hadn't been a curse. It was a doorway to a truth darker than I could ever imagine, a truth that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family and about myself. And as I held that final letter in my hands, trembling, I couldn't shake the feeling that once I opened it, there'd be no going back. Imagine this. Your mother dies, leaving behind millions in jewelry, 2 mansions, and a family legacy so powerful it could buy silence in any courtroom. But what she leaves you is a trunk, a locked, dusty, decades-old trunk. No diamonds, no inheritance, just that. And when you finally open it, inside you don't find treasure. You find letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to you, and every single one whispering the same impossible truth. You were stolen. My name, at least the one I grew up with, is Roland Vance, son of Beatrice Vance, jewelry tycoon, queen of the Manhattan elite, and a woman who never took no for an answer. But the name written on those letters wasn't Vance. It was Brennan, Roland Brennan. Let me take you back to where this all began. When the lawyer unfolded my mother's will, the air in that marble office grew colder than winter glass. Portia, my eldest sister, sat across from me, perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect everything. She'd been managing the flagship stores in New York and Boston for years, so when the lawyer read her name first, no one was surprised. Open quote, "To my eldest daughter, Portia Jane Vance, I leave the flagship stores in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia, along with the Burmese rubies and $4 million in liquid assets." Close quote. She nodded. No reaction, no gratitude, like she already knew. Because of course she did. Then came Cordelia, the golden child of design. Open quote. "To my youngest daughter, Cordelia Marie Vance, I leave the international branches in Paris, Milan, and Tokyo, the vintage collection dating from 1890 to 1950, and $3.5 million in liquid assets." Close quote. Cordelia smiled softly, eyes already drifting to the window, probably imagining her next exhibition in Paris. And then, silence. The lawyer hesitated. His voice trembled, like even he didn't want to read what came next. Open quote, "To my son, Roland Gerald Vance." Close quote. A pause. A long one. Open quote, "I leave the contents of the trunk in my bedroom closet, which he is to open only after my passing." Close quote. The room froze. Portia burst out laughing. "That's it? The trunk?" She turned to me, eyes sparkling with cruelty. "Oh, Roland, maybe it's full of gold coins, or better yet, mother's diary confessing you were always her favorite." Uncle Chester's voice cut through her laughter. "Porsche." But I caught the flicker of a smirk on his lips, too. Cordelia looked at me with pity, and that somehow stung worse. The lawyer wasn't done. He slid a single cream-colored envelope across the table toward me. "Your mother left this letter for you, Mr. Vance." Inside, her handwriting was perfect, as always. Precise. Cold. Open quote, "Roland, the trunk contains what you deserve. No more, no less. You chose your path despite my efforts to guide you toward success. Your sisters understood what it meant to be a Vance. You never did. Perhaps what you find inside will finally teach you the lesson you refused to learn. Some truths are more valuable than money. Some are better left buried." Close quote, cryptic to the end. Portia stood, smoothing her skirt. "Well, do let us know if your inheritance includes anything interesting." Maybe father's old tax forms or that hideous lamp she couldn't part with. They left laughing, and when the door closed, I was still sitting there, staring at the letter that was supposed to teach me a lesson. That's when Uncle Chester spoke, his voice low, uneasy. Go open it, Roland, but prepare yourself. Beatrice never did anything without purpose. I don't even remember the drive home, just flashes of the road, the gray sky, and the way my fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight they ached. The mansion was empty now, echoing, stripped of her presence except for that faint scent of her perfume. Boxes lined the hallways, white sheets draped the furniture like ghosts waiting for orders. And there it was, the trunk, exactly where it had always been, against the back wall of her closet. Leather cracked, brass corners green with age, the lock dull but unbroken. For 37 years, I'd looked at that thing and wondered what she hid inside. I grabbed a crowbar from the garage. 37 years, I whispered, breath shaking. 37 years of control. The lock gave way with a loud, metallic crack, and the truth came spilling out. No gold, no heirlooms, just letters. Hundreds of them tied neatly in bundles, each one labeled by year. The earliest marked age 5-6. Every envelope addressed to me. Every return address the same. A and D, Brennan. Riverside, California. My knees gave out. I sat right there on the floor, surrounded by the ghosts of words I'd never been allowed to read. The first envelope was postmarked just 2 weeks after my 5th birthday. Inside, the handwriting trembled with desperation. Open quote, Dear Roland, happy 5th birthday, sweet boy. We pray this letter finds you, though we fear it won't. Beatrice Vance has no right to keep you. You were stolen from us, and we've been fighting to get you back ever since. Your real name is Roland Brennan. I am your mother, Anita. You have a brother, Damon, who cries for you every night. We won't stop fighting. We won't stop looking for you. Close quote. I couldn't breathe. I ripped open another one, dated 6 months later, open quote. Roland, the judge wouldn't listen. Beatrice's lawyers called me delusional. They said I never had a son, but I have your birth certificate, your baby blanket with the little elephants. Damon still sets your place at the table. Close quote. I kept reading, letter after letter, until the words blurred through my tears. Each page, another year of begging, pleading, documenting a war I never knew existed. Then, evidence, court filings, DNA test results, 99.9% match, photographs. One of me at a school recital, another at graduation, one from last year teaching band to a group of middle schoolers. Someone had been following me, watching my entire life unfold from the shadows. A letter from when I was 10 changed everything. Open quote. We found you, Roland. We sat in the back of your school concert. You played the piano so beautifully, I sobbed the entire time. You looked right at us. I wanted to scream, I'm your mother, but the police were watching. Beatrice made sure of that. Close quote. I saw it all. The audience, the stage, the faceless crowd. And suddenly I remembered a moment. A pair of strangers in the back row, crying quietly. I'd thought they were just emotional parents. They were mine. Then came the letter that explained how it happened. Open quote, Beatrice found out I was pregnant with Gerald's child. She couldn't have children of her own. When you were 5, she invited us on a trip to Lake Tahoe, pretending to make peace. She had me drugged at dinner, committed to a psychiatric ward for 3 days. By the time I was released, she had already filed papers claiming you as hers. She had money, judges, influence. I had the truth. But in America, truth without money is just noise. Close quote. I dropped the letter. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. This woman, this stranger, was my real mother, and the woman who raised me, the one who told me discipline was love, who measured affection in achievements. She'd stolen me. The most recent letter was postmarked only a month ago. Open quote, Roland, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Your Uncle Chester called. His conscience finally broke. He says you'll get the trunk when she dies. If you're reading this, it means you found the truth. Your brother Damon and I still live in the same house, 4827 Sycamore Street. Please, if you have even a fragment of curiosity left in you, come home. Just once, let me see my son as a free man. Close quote. I stood. The room was spinning. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Was I Roland Vance, the disappointment, the failure, or Roland Brennan, the stolen child? There was only one way to know. I grabbed the letter, my car keys, and left. The drive to Riverside was a blur. 3 hours of headlights, rain, and the kind of silence that hums in your bones. The house was small, warm looking, blue shutters, a front yard full of roses, a wooden swing hanging from an oak tree. The kind of place that smelled like Sunday mornings and home cooked meals. I walked up the steps, heart pounding, rang the bell, the door opened, and there he was. A man who looked like me, but stronger, broader, older by just a few years, same brown eyes, same crooked nose. He froze, his lips trembled. "Roland," he whispered. "I found the letters," I managed to say, and then he was hugging me. Tight, desperate, real. He smelled of sawdust and coffee, and he was crying, openly, the way no one in the Vance family ever would. "My God," he said, "you're here. You're actually here." He led me inside. The walls, every inch of them, were covered in photographs of me. At 8 years old, playing baseball. At 12, holding a music award. At 16, at father's funeral. College graduation, even one from last month, me conducting the school band. "We never missed anything," Damon said quietly. "When mom couldn't afford private investigators anymore, I did it myself. Learned photography just to keep track of you." I turned to him, throat tight. "Where is she?" I whispered. "Where's mom?" He hesitated. His eyes dropped to the floor. "She passed 2 weeks ago," he said. "She held on as long as she could. Chester called the day before she died, told us about the trunk, about the will. She smiled, Roland. She smiled." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I'd found the truth, but I was too late. Damon handed me a small wooden box. Inside, folded carefully, was a photograph. Me as a baby in Anita's arms. Her eyes full of life, her smile the same one I'd never seen in Beatrice. "She made me promise," Damon said, "if you ever came home, to give you this." Inside the box, beneath the photo, was a key. Old, worn, engraved with the initials G.V. Gerald Vance. "My father." Damon looked at me. "She said it unlocks something in the house, said you'd understand when you were ready." I turned the key over in my hands, feeling the weight of every lie I'd ever been told. The trunk wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And somewhere out there, another secret, my father's, was still waiting to be unlocked. I was never supposed to know the truth. Not like this. Not standing in a living room filled with the ghosts of a life I never lived. A home I should have grown up in, a mother I should have known, a brother I should have grown beside. But fate has a cruel sense of timing, because by the time I finally found my real family, it was already too late. "She said you'd come," Damon whispered, his voice trembling. "She said, he'll find the letters. He'll come home." The grief hit me like a physical blow, sharp, raw, unstoppable. My knees almost buckled under the weight of it. I'd been robbed of my mother twice, once when I was 5 years old, and again just 2 weeks ago. I turned to Damon, my throat dry. "Tell me everything," I said. "I need to know everything." He nodded slowly and walked to an old metal filing cabinet in the corner of the room. When he opened it, the drawers groaned with age, as if even they were tired of holding secrets. He pulled out folders, thick with documents, photographs, old court papers, even newspaper clippings. He laid them out on the coffee table between us like evidence in a case that had never truly been tried. "Dad, Gerald, wasn't married to Beatrice when you were born," Damon began. "They worked together. She was a client relations manager, Mom was his secretary, and they fell in love. Real love. Not the business arrangement that came later." I stared at the papers, barely breathing. "You were born in 1982, Damon continued, opening a file and showing me an official-looking document. "Roland James Brennan, born March 15th, 1982, to Anita Brennan and Gerald Vance." My name, my real name. Damon's voice trembled with controlled anger. "Beatrice couldn't have children, though she hid that from everyone. When she found out about Mom, about you, she made a plan. She pretended to accept everything, even offered to help Dad tell the family. That trip to Lake Tahoe, it was supposed to be a family vacation, a chance to make peace. But instead," he slid a police report across the table. "Instead, she had Mom drugged at dinner. And while she was unconscious, Beatrice took you." I could barely process the words. "She took me?" Damon nodded. "She already had everything prepared. Forged papers. Birth certificates claiming you were hers. By the time Mom woke up in the hospital 3 days later, Beatrice had filed a restraining order claiming Mom was delusional, obsessed with her child. Her lawyers buried the truth. Her money made sure no one ever questioned her story." I reached for the DNA results that I'd found in the trunk. the ones that had nearly broken me. We did 5 of these, Damon said bitterly. Every single time we tried to use them in court, her lawyers claimed contamination, fraud, anything to discredit them. She had judges in her pocket, journalists on her payroll, and more influence than we could ever dream of. We were nobody. She was Beatrice Vance, the glamorous jewelry queen, friend to senators and governors. He reached for another photo, this one of a young woman holding a baby. Her smile was radiant, her eyes kind, and the child in her arms was me. I felt something crack deep inside. Those are real, Damon said softly. That's Mom, Anita. She loved you more than her own life. She never stopped fighting for you. Photo after photo, Anita with me at a park, Anita laughing with Damon while I sat in her lap. Memories I should have had replaced by a childhood built on lies. The jewelry empire everyone thinks Beatrice built from scratch, Damon said quietly. That was all started with Dad's family money. Money that should have gone to support Mom, to support you. And Portia and Cordelia, they're not even Dad's biological children. Beatrice had affairs throughout her marriage, but Dad stayed. He thought he was staying for you, not knowing that you were the only real part of that entire twisted family. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. And Chester? I asked. How did he know? Damon's expression darkened. He helped her, he said. He was the one who vouched for her story, the one who testified that you'd always been Beatrice's son. He was her partner in the lie. A chill went through me. He knew? Damon nodded. He knew everything. But guilt eats at a man. About 10 years ago, he started sending us money, small amounts, never enough to matter, but enough to say, I remember. When Beatrice got sick, he called, told us to wait, that the truth would come out when she was gone. I looked down at the table, at the photo of Anita holding me as a baby, both of us laughing at something out of frame. My vision blurred. She died thinking I didn't know, I whispered. She died without ever hearing me call her Mom. The next morning, the sound of a car pulling up jolted me awake. Damon glanced out the window, his jaw tightening. It's him, he said. Uncle Chester stood on the front porch, older than I remembered, smaller somehow, like the weight of his guilt had physically crushed him. Damon opened the door, but didn't step aside. I know you hate me, Chester began, voice trembling. I helped her do it. I thought I was protecting the family name, protecting Gerald from scandal. I vouched for her story. I lied under oath. I watched you grow up knowing the truth, and I said nothing. My hands curled into fists. You watched her break me for 37 years, I said, stepping forward. You watched her destroy every part of me that could have known love, and you said nothing. I started sending the money, Chester said weakly. Blood money? Damon snapped. 500 here, 1,000 there. You think that fixed anything? Our mother died of a broken heart. That's what your money bought. Chester's eyes filled with tears. I know, he whispered. That's why I came. I kept everything. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. My sworn affidavit, documents I hid, recordings of Beatrice's confession when she was on morphine near the end. It's all in here. It's enough to destroy her legacy, to prove the truth, maybe even overturn her will. I stared at the envelope, my pulse pounding. Why now? Chester looked up, his eyes hollow. Because Anita called me before she died. She didn't beg for herself. She begged for you. She said she could die in peace if she knew you'd finally come home. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't honor that. The months that followed were chaos. The truth exploded across headlines. Jewelry heiress built empire on kidnapped child. Stolen son reclaims fortune after 37-year lie. Portia and Cordelia tried to fight it at first. Of course they did. The best lawyers money could buy, all shouting about misunderstandings and forged documents. But when Chester's sworn testimony hit the court, when the DNA results were verified by independent labs, when Beatrice's recorded confession played for the world to hear, everything fell apart. Her empire, her entire identity, crumbled. Within 6 months, it was over. Every store, every property, every asset was liquidated. The courts awarded me everything, the fortune, the company, the rights, the estate. $16 million, they said. But the number meant nothing, because no amount of money could buy back time. I gave Portia and Cordelia each $1 million. They weren't to blame. They were as much victims as I was, raised by a woman who didn't know love, only control. Portia left the country. Cordelia stayed, and slowly, painfully, we began to talk. But the real inheritance, the true treasure, came from Damon. One evening, he brought me a small wooden box. Inside were the things Anita had kept for me: birthday cards she'd never been allowed to send, voice recordings of her talking to me as a baby, a little blue blanket with elephants, the same one she said I loved when I was 5. I ran my fingers over it, tears spilling freely. It was soft, worn at the edges, like smelling faintly of lavender and something achingly familiar: home. That night, Damon and I sat on the porch our mother had built, watching the sunset fade into gold. You know, he said quietly, I never married. I couldn't imagine starting a family when ours was broken. I looked at him, feeling something shift inside me. It's not broken anymore, I said. He smiled, the same smile I'd seen in the photographs. I stayed in Riverside after that. I left the city, left the mansion, the money, the name, Vance. I went back to teaching, music this time. I started a small foundation at the local elementary school, the Anita Brennan Music Program, for kids who needed a voice, kids who might not have anyone fighting for them. Every concert, I told the audience, this is named after my mother, the bravest woman I've ever known. 6 months later, I found myself standing between two graves. On my left, a towering marble monument already starting to fade, Beatrice Vance, her legacy dissolving faster than her empire ever grew. On my right, a simple headstone carved with care, Anita Brennan, beloved mother, never stopped fighting, finally won. I placed a single rose, her favorite, beside her name. The garden roses she used to grow were the same kind. I whispered, I'm home, Mom. I'm finally home. The wind rustled through the trees, almost like an answer. You see, some prisons aren't made of bars, they're built from lies. Lies told so often that they become reality. For 37 years, I was Roland Vance, the disappointment, the failure, the son who never measured up. But that was never who I was. I was Roland Brennan, the stolen child, the boy who was loved beyond measure, fought for every single day, and never forgotten. The trunk my so-called mother left me was supposed to be her final cruelty, but instead, it became my salvation. She thought she was leaving me worthless old letters, but what she really left was proof. Proof that love, real unconditional love, outlives lies, outlasts greed, and defies death itself. $16 million couldn't buy what was in that trunk, because the truth, the real truth, is priceless. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, it's discovering who you really are, where you came from. And that somewhere out there, someone loved you so much, they never stopped fighting for you. I was never a disappointment. I was just lost. And now I'm found. But even now, even with the truth laid bare and justice finally served, there are nights when I still wake up hearing her voice, faint, soft, just beyond the veil of sleep, whispering my name like she used to when I was small. And I can't help but wonder if some secrets don't end with the truth, but begin with it.